This segment is brought to you by St. Martin and Bourke. Know your rights.
Welcome to Bayou Time. I'm Jacob DeGate, glad to be your host, and I'm pleased to have from the Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office, First Lieutenant Blake Tabor. Thank you very much for joining us.
I appreciate you having me, Jacob. Thank you.
All right, I know you got a couple of arrests to comment on, one that I know you've been receiving a lot of comments on. Can you tell us about the first one?
Absolutely. So again, this is one that, we have those complaints that garner a lot of interest from the public, and then we have those that just absolutely fire the public up beyond all belief, and this is one of those. So ultimately on Sunday, the 16th, shortly before 9 a.m., our officers were called to Maumont Court in reference to a disturbance that was being reported by neighbors, which ultimately consisted of a disturbance between a male and a female, but additionally a dog that was allegedly punched and thrown to the ground that may have received some injury. So, not that people weren't upset about the disturbance between the male and the female, but when we interject the animal, that's what caused the disturbance, obviously. When deputies arrived, they began trying to talk to a female at the scene about the incident when a male emerged from the house, and he immediately went from 0 to 60 with the attitude, yelling at the neighbors, lots of vulgarities taking place. Of course, anytime that happens, our deputies do what they need to try to calm the situation down, which is exactly what they did, and that had little to no work for that male subject. So ultimately, the male ended up aggressively approaching one of our deputies, which caused him to have to go hands-on and decide to arrest the person, who was later identified as a Gene Eddie Theriault. He's a 51-year-old male from Houma. You see him photographed here. Ultimately, as the deputy tried to initiate the arrest, Mr. Theriault struck the officer with a closed fist to the side of the head. So anytime we know that anytime something like that happens, we have to take it to the next level. Ultimately, another deputy arrived on scene, and they began to use the deployment of a Taser 10 to gain him under control, which they were able to utilize and get him arrested and handcuffed. That is not where the fight stopped, though. Ultimately, Mr. Theriault continued committing such actions as resisting, kicking, and headbutting the deputies on several occasions as they tried to put him into a car for transport. Ultimately, they were able to get him inside that vehicle, and a Canadian ambulance service arrived on scene to provide medical treatment to not only the officers, but Mr. Theriault as well. During the course of the investigation, as it continued, they again spoke with neighbors who determined that they observed the dog being slammed to the ground to the point where the dog was unable to move for a short period of time. Ultimately, that led to the arrest of Mr. Theriault for cruelty to animals, 2 counts of resisting an officer by force or violence, and 2 counts of battery on a police officer. At that time, he was jailed on a $45,000 bond. And ultimately, the animal was checked. I know that's one thing that everybody wants to know. The animal was checked out and cleared, and I believe that someone took custody of that animal at a later time where that animal is no longer in the presence of Mr. Theriault, obviously.
Well, it's, hopefully, glad the dog, I guess, is okay, and,
Sure.
and we certainly hope that the officers themselves, because they were injured as well, so can't forget about them.
Absolutely. And look, and it was minor injuries, but again, these things can escalate very quickly, and we know, minor injuries could lead to very serious things very quickly. Just thank God that didn't happen in this particular instance.
Certainly. Okay, we got one more arrest to update on.
Absolutely. This was kind of a unique one. So this one, again, happened late last week on Thursday, when a homeowner returned home on Exeter Run, and when they arrived at their home, they were able to see a male suspect that was on the back porch attempting what the homeowner believed was breaking into the home. At that point, the homeowner confronted the individual, who fled the area on foot. Ultimately, that required a response for our Criminal Patrol Division, who quickly got to that area and began searching Exeter Run, 311 area neighborhood for that particular suspect, in which they were able to locate him near that intersection of Highway 311 and Exeter Run. Our Criminal Patrol Division quickly identified that person as Ronald Joseph Armand Jr., 31. You see him photographed here. And he was ultimately taken into custody preliminarily as they began and continued their investigation. Once they conducted a search of Mr. Armand, he also had a backpack that he was wearing where they discovered several items that were clearly stolen from the home. Ultimately, that led to the homeowner being called to the scene, who verified that those items were in fact stolen from the home. And again, once Mr. Armand left the residence, that homeowner did his own sort of investigation, if you will, and discovered some indicators inside the home that Mr. Armand had entered. So ultimately, once those stolen items were confirmed, we know what happens at that point. Mr. Armand was ultimately arrested for simple burglary of an inhabited dwelling, and he remains jailed in our custody for a $50,000 bond by local judges. Now, in addition to that, there was an outstanding warrant through Assumption Parish for an unrelated charge, which he was also booked for as well.
Well, that's interesting. You don't see, well, you may see burglaries during the daytime like
Sure.
this. It's something that you don't think about. You only think that at nighttime maybe somebody can come. But you got to
Absolutely.
make sure to lock your doors during all times.
Yep, and look, it's broad daylight, as you spoke about, and we always talk to people about being vigilant no matter what time of day, no matter what day it is, what the circumstances are. Anytime you arrive home, you have to have a plan in place just in case something like this happens. And this is another prime example of how people can be caught off guard and caught by surprise.
Certainly. It was great that the officers were able to respond quick and get that arrest made. Well, we thank you very much for coming on, giving updates on what's going on with the sheriff's office.
Thanks for having me.
Stay tuned for more right here on HTV.
This segment was brought to you by St. Martin and Bourke. Know your rights.